Any physical signal, whether it is a sound wave, a photograph, or a burst of neural activity, can be broken down through Fourier analysis. When you strip away the surface appearance of a signal, what remains is an abstract architecture of mathematical waveforms, which can be further decomposed into fields of highly structured geometric noise. Within this math lies a paradox of signal processing, first demonstrated by Alan Oppenheim and John Lim in 1981. They separated signals into two distinct components: magnitude, which dictates how much energy exists at a given frequency, and phase, which dictates how those frequencies align relative to one another. This diagram shows a side-by-side reconstruction of a photograph based on that separation. On the left, reconstructing the image using only original phase data perfectly preserves the recognizable structure. On the right, reconstructing using raw magnitude data yields unrecognizable static. This principle extends far beyond classic signal processing. A 2026 study by Alper Yildirim proved that modern artificial intelligence architectures, including vision transformers and ResNet, strictly obey this mathematical rule. When Yildirim transplanted the phase data of image A and injected it into the magnitude data of image B, the neural network classifiers invariably recognized image A. The system completely ignored the raw energy profile, following the organizational geometry of the first. This decoupling of energy and organization is a universal property of complex networks. It provides the mechanical foundation for the brain kinematics model, suggesting that this same mathematical rule governs the emergence of human consciousness inside the cerebral cortex. Recognition depends on these spatial and temporal relationships. While magnitude provides the necessary energy for a signal to exist, identity is a function of the arrangement. To understand how the brain translates sensory input into conscious thought, we have to look past the sheer volume of neural firing. The brain kinematics model asks how the cerebral cortex interprets the equivalence of Fourier phase and magnitude to generate human sensation. Here, phase maps directly to neural synchronization and pathway geometry, known as strain topology. The specific connection pattern dictates the shape of information. Conversely, magnitude maps to raw firing rates, strain intensity. It measures how hard neurons work, independent of connections. Modern neuroscience supports this division. Processes like memory retrieval and perception rely on precise phase locking and cross-frequency coupling, such as theta-gamma rhythms. 1,000 neurons firing rapidly means nothing if their temporal relationships are disorganized. A human mind's perception of a specific object relies entirely on the precise geometry of that strain flow. The sheer volume of neural activity is irrelevant to the identity of the percept. An image of a dog remains visually identical regardless of who sees it, yet it can evoke joy in one person and fear in another. This suggests that visual identity and emotional interpretation are carried by distinct representational mechanisms. Consciousness uses a multi-layer representation. Layer 1 is identity, encoding spatial structure. Layer 2 is emotional category, a parallel topology dictating feeling. Layer 3 is intensity, the magnitude determining urgency. Finally, Layer 4 is personal meaning, linking it to unique memories. Emotional meaning and visual identity are mathematically decoupled topologies. The brain recognizes what it sees through one geometry and calculates why it matters through another. This decoupling is most visible during sleep. Waking perception is dictated by externally constrained strain flows, the physical environment continuously correcting your sensory inputs. Dreaming operates entirely via internally generated strain flow. This internal generation explains the phenomenon of dream surrealism. A rigid grid of meaning persists in your mind, even as surface materials violently morph from a childhood home to a sterile modern office. Because external sensory reality is muted, the brain is free to preserve the emotional phase logic while rapidly discarding and swapping physical identities. The feeling remains continuous, the physical rendering does not. This is why age blending occurs in dreams. You might see a sibling simultaneously as a child and an adult because a specific topological identity matrix is being activated alongside multiple conflicting temporal memory pathways. This generation of meaning without physical constraints closely mirrors the deliberate techniques used by 20th century surrealist painters. Artists like Salvador Dali bypassed physical logic to build physically impossible object combinations that retained deep symbolic coherence. Dreams are not glitches, and they are not broken memories. They are highly ordered, meaning-preserving mathematical transformations operating purely on emotional topology. The mechanical precision of these internal generators becomes apparent when we compare the closed system of dreams to the waking hallucinations characteristic of schizophrenia. This comparative matrix tracks the balance between external sensory inputs and internal topological generators. Dreams replace reality safely within a closed system, but in schizophrenia, internal meaning topologies actively compete with physical reality, becoming so strong they overpower the eyes. The brain kinematics model presents a testable hypothesis for the future of neuroimaging. Recorded phase relationships will strictly predict the perceived content of a subject's thoughts, while the amplitude of those signals will map exclusively to their emotional intensity. We are arriving at a unified understanding of how systems process information, bridging the gap between artificial architectures and biological evolution. A vision transformer and a human cerebral cortex both pulse with identical geometric rhythms to accomplish the exact same task. Whether processing reality inside the silicon latent space of a machine or the biological wetware of the human brain, meaning is a property of architecture. Topology defines the identity, magnitude defines the strength.